Greetings, welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel for a little update on our air layering project, year 2. Now, we've done 2 previous videos here. I did a long video on how we make these air layerings and a second video on the first harvest of some of our air layerings. And I'll put links to those in the end screen. This won't be a real long video, so I'm just going to put all of that in the end screen. If you want to jump back and see what the early stages of this project were, you can go and do that. And I'd love if you did. It'd be great for the channel. The algorithm would love it, and I'm grateful to you for coming and visiting with us. But here I want to talk about year 2, how things are going, okay? And, you know, as always with plant propagation, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. We have some really wonderful successes and some failures to report to you. But I want to be honest about all of that so you have a realistic perspective on what's going to happen when you use this propagation technique, okay? So, first off, I'll start with the bad news. We'll get that out of the way. So, last year I had harvested these 2 U-bush cuttings, okay? They both had really big globs of root on them, and were really nice looking cuttings. So this is one, and this is still going, but it hasn't grown enough roots to pot up, right? It's kind of loose and floppy in this pot still, and I'm going to doctor it and attend to it a little bit by packing some more peat moss here in this pot, but it's not ready. Even though it's not ready, it is still alive. It has nice supple growth. The deer came and pruned on it a little bit this winter, which I wish they hadn't done. We've got lots of nice supple growth. We've got nice fleshy bark throughout this cutting. It's very much alive and it's working. I'm going to put a little more peat moss in the pot because it settled some. And, okay, this one's getting in my way. Go over there. Just going to lay that down. Okay. But it's doing its thing and it will continue to do its thing. This one is the other of the 2 cuttings. And again, it had a nice big poof of white roots here in the ball. I planted this the same day I planted that other one, but for reasons that I don't really understand, all of the roots just shed when I planted it. Right, so I planted it and I came back and looked at it a month later, and all of the roots that had grown here just shed and it was starting to die, and it has since then completely died. This is a thing that will happen. Not all of them will grow, but it's still a nice little example of what does happen. See, that little nub is still kind of wanting to grow a root, but it won't grow enough fast enough to save the life of this, and it does have one little twig that's still green. But all of these raised spots here on the bark, all of that roughness, you can see how smooth this bark is and how rough this is. All those rough spots had a root in it, growing out of a lenticule in those locations. But it shed them, and this cutting was unsuccessful. Now, this was a branch that needed to be pruned anyway, so it was going to be dead. I gave it a chance to live. It didn't quite make it, and it ends up on the pruning pile. Okay? So here's a couple that were very successful. Look at the beautiful flowers coming up on this quince. Okay? And this apple cutting, this crab apple that I was fussing with before, look at the abundant growth on this thing, okay? And if I pull these from their pots, careful, but look at all that nice white root coming in, okay? So this is ready to pot on. The peat moss has done its job. It has a nice ball of roots. That ball of roots is capable of supporting the tree. And now I'm going to pot this just like I would any other tree. But look at that beautiful instant tree that we've made. Apples like moisture. And I'm just putting this in just straight up compost. It's got vigorous root growth. It will fully colonize this pot very quickly. Okay? So I'm not worried about that. If this was a slower, little bit of peat moss fell out of there. We'll stick him right in that guy. If this was a slower growing species, I would use a more airy mix, and that would keep the loft in the soil a little bit longer and give it a little bit more time to colonize before the soil collapses. But I am fully confident that this little tree is going to fully colonize the soil mass within a month or two, and the soil won't have, that pure compost soil won't have time to collapse. Now it's still a little wobbly here, and I will end up tying this to something or propping it against a wall so that it has, so it doesn't flop around and break roots, okay? But that guy's good. This one, again, it did a really good job of colonizing this peat moss, but a lot of these roots the tips have died off. I'm not sure if that's winter damage or if that's excessive water because I've had it in a pan of water. That is a good thing to do in order to get these plants going, but it's not a forever solution, okay? And once they have enough roots to fully colonize that peat moss, all of that water becomes too much water. So I'm still confident that this guy is going to make it. But in order to reinforce the success we've already gotten, it's definitely time to get it into some real soil. So once again, this is a flowering quince. Super vigorous, aggressively growing species. And I'm using straight compost because I am confident it will fully colonize this pot with roots faster than the compost rots down and the soil collapses. Okay? So there is, get out of the way, a second success. And now, as I mentioned in the harvesting video, last fall there were a few that were ready to harvest. This was the first. This one I didn't harvest on film, but I harvested that a few weeks after this one, and after these two. But there were a lot of cuttings that were still hanging, okay, and had not yet grown enough roots to harvest. And now I'm going back. We've had a bit of root growth time in the spring. Boy, roosters have no respect for filming, do they? I'm going back and I'm checking all of the ones that weren't quite ready in the fall. And these two have grown nice root balls in the moss. Okay. So there, I'm not sure it's going to pick it up. There you've got a whole region with nice growing tips. Okay. So these are now going to go into a small pot of peat moss and go in this pan of water to help nurture them to the next stage. And hopefully this fall, they will have colonized the pot of peat moss. And that guy just came right over here to yell in our ear, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So hopefully this fall, they will have fully colonized this pot of peat moss and be ready for soil in time for the fall root elongation period. So, these are two cider apples. This is the one, if you watch the grafting video, I'll put that here in the end screen as well for you. This is the trees that I call Chapman Spitter that are one of our neighbors. His family history of these coming from Johnny Appleseed and his cider tree plantings, and they're Bitter Spitter cider apples with nice root balls ready to go and ready to become trees on their own roots for full-sized apple trees. So I'm going to continue going on with this and checking all of these, but I wanted to take a little pause in my day's activities here in the garden and show you what I'm up to and what this propagation techniques looks like going forward. There's still a lot of bags hanging in trees. Some of these won't strike until the third year, some maybe even into the fourth. This is not a super fast, immediate gratification method, but it's a very good method because how else would you get a tree this big right from the get-go, And this will be a tree faster. It's already in bloom. This will come in and allow for propagation in the long run faster to production than grafting even, and definitely faster to production than seed. So it's not immediate gratification. You can't just say, well, 2 months from every time I tie a bag in a tree, I'm going to have a new plant. But it is, overall, a very nice, very efficient way to go. So, wanted to give you this update and show you what's working and what's not working and just how it looks as you move through the years with this propagation method. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If so, give her a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm know that you'd enjoyed it. And if you would like to support what we do here, because this is an unmonetized, unsponsored channel, and I would like to keep it that way, but I need your help to keep it that way. We have a Patreon, link at the bottom of the description box below. If you wanted to go on and visit us over there, we would be most grateful for that as well. But either way, I hope that you'll join us here next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.